KSBW Studios, it's Feedback at 5 with Theresa Wright.
Hi, I'm Theresa and welcome to Feedback at 5. The question today is, what would you do if you saw a need in our community and wanted to make a difference? Would you really have the courage to do something about it and make a change? Well, there is a local woman who decided that she did, in fact, want to do something about it. Let me introduce my guests who are here because they're going to tell you about a new nonprofit organization that is truly making a difference in our community. Sitting next to me is Trisha Isaiah, and Trisha is a volunteer with that program, and I want to thank you for being here. Sitting next to you is the woman that I was referring to. This is Julianne Leavy, who is the executive director of a new nonprofit organization. It's fairly new, Julianne. It's called Harmony at Home. And so I'm going to ask you to tell folks a little bit about your background, because I think that then addresses why you started this nonprofit organization.
Okay, thank you, Theresa. I've been working with families and children of domestic violence for about 12 years. I always have known I've wanted to work with children that have been victims of abuse. But when I was in graduate school, my first case as an intern training in the Cupertino Unified School District was a little 10-year-old boy. He was in a very violent home, and I realized that my work with him was on helping him to learn to be safe in a very, very violent home. He wasn't being physically abused himself, but he was witnessing violence in his home and was terrified every day. But Child Protective Services couldn't remove him from the home. So that was the start of it. That's when I realized this is the work that I need to do. So since then, I came back to the Peninsula, started working for the YWCA and the Battered Women's Shelter, and started working in the schools and realized the children really need a program. I'm working with these adults, they're not changing their behavior, and the children are suffering. So I decided that we need a program for children that will help plant seeds, help children learn that there are alternatives to violence, and that there are ways to express your feelings that are healthy. It's okay to be mad or angry or sad. It's how you show it. And so that's how Sticks and Stones was born in 1997. And since then, I have just continued to do that work. I've expanded the programs. I've added programs to the current programs and just continued the work. And in 2004, I decided I need to bring this all together under one umbrella to just affect more change on a larger scale, to help raise more money, to help these children.
Money is always an issue.
Always an issue.
Right.
Yeah. It's constantly an issue. So we are looking at the community for support. Our funding comes primarily from the traditional ways, grants and donations. However, due to cuts and budget cuts and program cuts and all this, we are looking to our community to help sustain some of these programs.
Okay. And then Trisha, you are a volunteer for this program.
Yeah.
So you've been volunteering for a little bit, I understand. What kinds of things do you do?
I'm actually going to be a counselor at her teen summer enrichment class or camp, and I'm going to work with her there. And then I also, when she did her ribbon cutting ceremony and made her company public, I was there, and they played a little bit of my movie that I made for a senior project.
We're gonna see a little bit of your movie and just a little bit, because I do want you to tell us about that, because it definitely goes to why you're volunteering for this organization. But Julianne, if I can just go back to you, if you can talk a little bit, if you will, about, you know, it's so intellectual when you say, you know, you're working with kids and giving them coping mechanisms, but for, I think, the viewer out there to truly understand the trauma that a child is put through and how that affects them for the rest of their life. Now, whether you give them coping skills or not, they are going to be affected by that for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. There are studies being done now that indicate children exposed to domestic violence, as their brains are developing, they're being changed because of this exposure. There's doctors that are doing research on this where it shows a developing child's brain that has been exposed to domestic violence looks the same as a child that has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So their brains are changing from, I mean, when they're in the womb, when they're developing, it's starting. So yeah, children are deeply affected. But what we're hoping with our programs through Harmony at Home is that we will help the children realize that they have choices. They've been traumatized, they've been harmed, but they're learning new ways to care for themselves.
So how do you empower the child, particularly if they're in an environment where they're not being taken out of the home? And so you're trying to affect the child's behavior, but then you still have this adult behavior and all the other siblings or whoever else is in the household that they have to deal with. So how do you go about empowering a child, particularly if you're talking about somebody who's a young child, to know that they can stand on their own, if you will, in their own space, and be strong?
Well, that's a wonderful question, and it's a constant challenge. But what we see is that the school is somewhat of a mirror into a family. So children often act out at school what they're experiencing at home. If it's violence, we often see very aggressive children fighting on the playgrounds, or the opposite, we see extremely withdrawn children that really have very low self-esteem and are very fearful. So what we do through our program is we help children start making change in school, their behaviors in school, and they get a lot of accolades for this. We have a group of boys that just finished 3 boys finished a 10-week program of Sticks and Stones. They, when they were referred to the program, they were in the principal's office every single day. By the end of the 10 weeks, they were mentors for the kindergarten class. These were 5th grade boys. They were being referred to science camp, which would have never happened before. So they're realizing that they can change their lives. Mom and Dad may not be changing, but they can. And it's still very painful at home. But we're hoping maybe these boys, when they have children someday, will know a new way to parent.
Tricia, did you want to say something? Because you were kind of smiling and nodding as she was saying that.
It's so great because kids do have trouble at home, and as long as they have someone outside of home to help them, and I was lucky I had a very good home life. It was outside of home that I had trouble. But it's just when there's kids that can, these 5th grade boys that can already put it together at 5th grade at such a young age because of people like Julianne helping them. It makes me happy.
That's very cool. All right, here's what we're going to do is we're going to go to a break, and when we go to the break, I'm going to put up information about Harmony at Home, and then when we come back, we're going to show a little bit of the video that you did and talk about that. Here's the information. These are the different programs of Harmony at Home. As you see there on your screen, we'll take a short break, and we'll come right back.